I'm going to introduce now my dear friend, Lisa Rafel, who, as I wrote to you, is talented in so many things, you really can't sum it up easily. And we may not go down all those roads tonight, but I just want you to know that, there are some people on this planet who just exercise every bit of their psyche, and Lisa is one of them. She's been working on a play for a long time on a beautiful topic. She's very dedicated when she gets a project in her mind. And she's also a teacher. She's a spiritual teacher. She does sound healing and sound healing teaching. I've taken one of her courses. It was very good. And just a slew of other things. She also is a singer. She has several CDs that she produced years ago, or I don't even know how long. And she can belt it out, let me tell you. And she is just a very evolved soul. And at the same time, and maybe because of what she has been through in her life, she has chosen to evolve. That's the path she took. She could have caved, and maybe she did a few times, but she has always found a way to learn from her experiences and rise above, and then incorporate that into how she teaches others. So really that is you have to understand that I picked this theme for this month 7 months ago, not aware of the astrology, not aware that this week of all weeks is the week to be talking about taking your experiences and transmuting them into sharing your wisdom in the world. I didn't know that this would be the month to be talking about strength. I had Lisa in mind for strength for months and months, but anyway, just the magical way that the universe works. Here we are with the perfect speaker on the perfect week on the perfect topic. So with no further ado, welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you, Hope. Well, I love all that wonderful coming together. I think I was talking to somebody just this morning about flow, and she was saying, well, I'll ride the flow. And I said, but what if you used the flow? What if you were a part of the flow in a way that you understood that it's not just carrying you somewhere, but you are actually kicking part of the way too. And she loved that idea. And I think that's what the universe does. I think this coming together, the way you just mentioned it, the synchronicity of it all, it's like you were in the flow, but you kept kicking. You followed your inner instinct, and somehow all that came together beautifully.
Well, it sure did, and nobody is ever more surprised than I am when it happens.
Yeah.
Listen, let's start with letting everybody get to know you a little bit better, and why don't we go back a little bit and just touch upon pieces of your life that you feel are relevant, maybe some trips and falls, because honestly, when we're talking about strength, and we're talking about physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual strength, we've already covered physical strength. Last week was spiritual strength. This week is emotional strength. I haven't released it yet, but that's going to be next week, I should say. And inherent in emotional strength, one of the key components of emotional strength is resilience. Right. So let's talk about some opportunities that you had to develop your resilience.
I mean, it's a great question. I was an actress for 25 years. I was always trying to become somebody that I wasn't. My insecurity about who I actually was stemmed from my childhood of not being seen or heard, and that it was assumed I would just know how to somehow take care of myself. And so I assumed I would know how to take care of myself for most of my childhood, and really battled with the aloneness and the isolation and the not feeling valuable and wondering where that came from. And so to escape that, I immediately got married and felt that that would give me support, at least since I didn't have support in my family. And most of my childhood was really to be invisible so that people would not target me. I got married. I immediately became pregnant. I had 2 children. And that process of suddenly having to grow up wasn't as successful as my dreams were hoping it would be. 19 is pretty young to start to try to be a wise mother. And so there was a lot of learning, a lot of learning going on in a way, in hindsight, there are so many things you wish you had known, but I didn't know. And that marriage did not last very long. And when it ended, I was a single mother of 2 small children. And then, well, what do you do with that? So I became an actress. I was working, I was making commercials, I was doing voiceovers. I was trying to find some profession that would give me money so I could support my family. And, there was a lot of joy in learning, but there was a tremendous amount of fear of, am I doing it right? And so I had the opportunity to marry again. And this particular marriage, which I really believed was going to, of course, be the perfect marriage, turned out to be a nightmare of real proportion. And I had to find strength to get out. I had to find a way to recognize how I was in some situation that somehow I hadn't been able to recognize before I was in it. And I needed to learn how to do that. And I was having such difficulty. And then fate stepped in. And a couple of things happened right away. The first was we had a fight. And in the fight, he slammed the door on my hand, and I lost part of my finger in the fight. And I'm in the hospital. And in the hospital, I'm in severe pain. He does not help at all. And the doctor comes and says, well, we're going to amputate this finger. And I went, no, you're not. No, you're not. I play the piano. I play the guitar. No, you're not. And I found this voice in me that normally might have been, oh, well, this person knows better and there's going to be infections and you're going to go through a very hard time. And I just went, no, you're not. And it was this, something stood up inside of me. And that finger happens to be the identity finger. And I didn't know that then, but I somehow realized there was something I had to learn that I had never imagined before, which was I had to find myself. I had to find who I was. And so that led me into an experience where I ended up going to Nepal. My stepbrother had invited me to go. He was opening a clinic there. And I did not want to go. And by accident, while I was in a hardware store, this gentleman comes over to me and he says, I need to know who you are. And I thought maybe he's a producer, I'm in LA, I'm trying to get into television, maybe there's somebody I should talk to. So we go and we have a cup of coffee, and he's not a producer at all. But he said he was going to Toronto. And immediately what came out of my mouth, as loudly as, no, you're not going to take off my finger. It came out of my mouth and it was, oh, my brother lives in Toronto. You should meet him. And in fact, I think I'll go visit him too, and I'll introduce you. I had no intention to go to Toronto to meet my stepbrother. No intention at all. Next thing I know, we're buying tickets and we're going to Toronto. He's go doing his business, but I want to introduce him. It's really important to introduce him to my stepbrother because my stepbrother is going to Nepal. So we walk in the apartment and almost immediately, my stepbrother looks at him. He's a very peaceful, kind of tall man, and he's a doctor. And he says, you know, if you go with me to Nepal, it'll change your life. And this guy says, okay, I'm going, which really ticked me off. And now out of my mouth, I say, well, you're not going to go change your life with my brother without me. And that popped out of my mouth. So now I'm going to Nepal. And I have no idea why I'm going to Nepal. And a girlfriend from when I was living in Colorado, when before my second marriage, and I had stayed in touch, and she was a spiritual teacher. And I was fascinated. She loved astrology. She loved automatic writing. She was so weird. I thought she was wonderful. I had never been exposed to any of that except through her. And I hadn't seen her in a couple of years, long time actually. And I said, look, if I put together a workshop for you, can you afford to come? You know, can I get you to come and visit me? Because I'm going to Nepal and I don't know why. She said, oh, sure. So I put together this workshop and we're all in this circle in my living room, and she's putting us into this meditative state, and we're climbing this mountain and we're going to meet our guides, and we have our heads down on a table and we're supposed to lift our head up and meet the guides. And I lift my head up, and this is all in my mind. I'm seeing a room full of these beings. And she says, I hear faintly in my ear, she says, say hello. And I go, hello. And the force of their hello threw me back into my couch. And so I identified two guides, and three guides actually, and she leaves. And I'm getting more and more frightened. And I say, okay, I have to ask these guides, why am I afraid to go to Nepal? And the voice comes in and says, well, helplessly lying there on the side of a mountain, you were eaten by a tiger. And I interpreted that so interestingly. I said, well, I guess I'm going to Nepal to die. And suddenly I relaxed because I was really miserable. And I was tired of the struggle. And I was tired of fighting all the time. Mm-hmm. And my children were old enough now. And, you know, if I died, who would miss me? Really? So I wrote my will and I straightened my drawers like I wanted everybody to think I was so together. You know, I really prepared how I would be found would be perfect. And I went to Nepal.
How old were you, Lisa, at this point?
I was 38. Okay. And my life changed. I ended up climbing a mountain to meet the guru who wasn't there, which was the lesson. And yet I dealt with hypothermia. The group dealt with hypothermia. I spontaneously started doing healing, hands-on healing work. As people got sick, I spontaneously seemed to know what to do. And I started doing it. I suddenly realized I was in a life and death situation on the side of this mountain where I was left. And the question was, did I want to die? And this voice came into my head and said, put one foot in front of the other and climb this mountain. And that's what I did. And I created this mantra in my mind. My lungs were screaming, my legs were screaming. And I just went left, then right, and got up the mountain. And that night, wind was howling. We were in this guru's tiny shack. And two men on the group had hypothermia. And my stepbrother, who is a doctor, says, well, whatever you did with that guy yesterday, go do it now, because you got to save their lives. And he says, everybody strip off their clothes, get into these two sleeping bags zipped together into one. And I'm lying there between two very cold bodies, naked. And I start looking into their bodies to see where they're cold, to see where I'm supposed to send the heat. And that's what I do. And then they warm up. And then we're stuck on this wooden platform all night in this enormous physical pain with no lights. And our clothes were soaked from the climb. And so they took the clothes, so we couldn't get out. I didn't have a flashlight. And we're stuck all night in this sleeping bag. And that was when I learned how to pray. And
well, no better time than that.
I just said, God, get me through this night. Just get me through this night. Get me to the morning. Get me to the morning. Get me to the morning. I didn't know what that voice was, but I knew there was something there. And I later learned what that voice had been for me, which was the voice of Padmasambhava, who was my teacher and guide for quite a long time after that trip to Nepal. And I started listening. I started understanding that these people were the most beautiful creatures I had ever met. There was no judgment. They were kind and they were just enormously sweet. And I thought, why don't I know people like this? Why can't I be a person like this? And why is the sky changing? And how is that changing when I look at it? And why is magic happening? And how do I do this? And I'm enthralled in this moment. And then the storm comes. And so we're at the top of this mountain and the storm is coming. And my stepbrother says, well, we have to get out. And I'm riding on a horse that only has one eye. And the eye is on the inside, not on the outside. And we're going down this pathway with 2,000 feet off the side. And the horse keeps drifting to the cliff. And I'm hitting the horse with my fist going, if you die, I die. If you die, I die. And we get to the bottom and the adventure continued. Terrifying, getting off this mountain. Over and over again, I'm committing to life. I'm committing to life. I'm committing to life. So by the time I got home, I had lost 20 pounds. I had this complete altered state. I had no idea who I was, but I forgot one little part of the story. So as we get down the mountain, we stop at this little house where I had felt this strange spirit before going up the mountain. And I didn't like being in the house. And I'm outside doing my thing on the side of a mountain. And I heard the sound of a giant cat, like a tiger. And I came running back into the house. And I said to my stepbrother, I heard. And my stepbrother said, I heard it too. And so some part of the cycle of the karma was closed. Yeah. And so I could move forward. Uh-huh. So once I learned to listen, once I learned that my story was not just about me, and it was really about this, the other moment I didn't tell you, at the top of the mountain, just before the storm hit, at sunrise, I went out to see where we were, because the whole time we had been climbing in clouds. I had no idea where we were. We got lost twice in the Himalayas climbing this mountain. We were so in fog the whole time. And so that morning when we were at the top and the sunrise is coming up, I'm getting very emotional because that first light that exploded in the sky was like seeing God. And the light refracted into all these colors across the sky. And there was this beams of light reflecting off the snow of the Himalayas.
Mm.
And watching the sun rise with this, with all of these colors, I just knew there was a God.
Mm.
There couldn't be anything this beautiful without a God.
Wow, that's a heck of an awakening story. I can't believe I hadn't heard that one. I've heard a lot of your stories, but that's wow. Wow. So you come out of that and go back into life, which must have had its own challenges. But do you find that as you went through your life, you referred back to that experience on the mountain? How did it live with you after that?
Well, when I got back, first of all, I thought maybe I had gone crazy because I kept hearing the voice in my head.
Mhm.
And so I didn't want to tell anybody, but I felt like I had to tell somebody. So I wrote it all in poetry. And I started going to poetry readings and telling the story in the poems. And I started seeing that people didn't reject the story. And that was very helpful. I became vegetarian. I changed my whole behavior. It was like I had been, it's like once I was altered, I was never going to go back.
Right.
So yeah, and telling the story over and over and over again in the poems helped me to believe that it had actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was fantastical,
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you believe that?
Right.
So,
well, there's that rubber band effect. I talk about the rubber band effect. It wants to pull you back from the precipice of the magical world. It wants to snap you back. So it's
yeah, well, the psyche wants safety.
mm-hmm,
That's what it
exactly.
wants.
Yeah.
And so it wants habitual patterning.
Yeah.
It's not looking for adventure. It wants habitual patterning. So when you get that rubber band pulls you back, that's your psyche looking for safety.
Yeah.
And really trying to help you. It's not saying I'm denying you anything. It's trying to help you.
Get your feet back on the ground.
So be kind to the psyche is also pretty important. It's like, no, I'm not going to be held back at this moment, but I'm also not going to stand in front of the bus to see if I'm immortal. Mm-hmm. It was a process of real trial and error. Who am I now? Who am I now? How come I can do this? How come I can see these things? How come I can feel these things? It was a real across the board spontaneous opening. So, and then I went to a man who he really knew Buddhism very, very well. And I said, I have this presence in my head. I need help. And through him and through studying and through the information that he gave me, it was very clear what the initiation was that I had done in Nepal and how I had completed it and what I was being brought to become aware of. It's scary. It's scary.
It is.
You feel very other. You feel very abnormal, like somehow, I like to call, when I started teaching, I like to call it the new normal. We're the new normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's where we're moving to. And that's where many of us have already moved to. And then it's about finding the community and finding the support to be as filled with grace as we are.
Yeah.
So
So go further. I am, now that we know that piece and how you kind of came to yourself, well, that didn't mean that your trials stopped, because you
Oh, no.
had a bunch of trials. And then how did you begin to incorporate the healing into your life? The, you know, pull in the sound. How did you find that? What were the things that sort of that you would hang on to as you went through these trials?
Um, well, in the poetry performances, a man came over to me and handed me a flyer. And it talked about a woman who was taking a group of people to Greece to recreate the Eleusinian mysteries. And I had no idea what that was. But on the flyer, I read that the people who did this ceremony heard the voice of God. And since I hadn't talked about hearing this voice yet, I thought, well, maybe I'll learn more about it there. But I couldn't afford the trip. And then I got a national commercial. And so I could afford the trip. And so I'm in Greece and we're on Crete. And the teacher is asking us what brought us. And I said, well, there was this thing on the flyer that intrigued me about hearing the voices of God. And she turned as white as a sheet. And she said, there's nothing like that on the flyer. And she showed me the flyer. There was nothing like that on the flyer. So then the question was, what was I there for? And so I was doing an automatic writing. And I didn't even know I was doing it. I was writing in my journal. And as I was writing in my journal, we're going to the cave of baby Zeus, and seemed like a nice thing to go to. I'm writing in the journal and my hand does an automatic writing. It wasn't a reverse writing. It was straight across. And the writing went, would you like to change your life? And I wrote back, yes. And I was given a ceremony to do at the Temple of Athena in Delphi. And when we got to Delphi, I did the ceremony. And when we came back from Greece, the transformer outside my house blew up. My TV started to go on and off by itself. I'd walk by a computer and the computer would say abort. I'd hold a rock in my hand and it would change color. I was frightened.
Yeah.
I had no idea what to do with this much energy or how I was doing this effect. And I told my son, who was a teenager at the time, and I just said, I think they need to lock me up. And he's looking at the rocks changing and he says, no, we need to call National Geographic and show them what you can do. Which really helped, really, really helped. And then I had to I had to learn how to walk through fear. It was the first giant lesson of walking through fear, because you can't untangle fear. You can't cut it off. You can't destroy it. None of the old stories of, well, let's cut the cord. None of that worked for me. So the question was, how do you walk through it and what are you walking into? Mm-hmm. And that's when I started immediately doing hands-on healing work and sound work. People would come. They'd come from Sedona. People would just come and say, I heard about you. This is my problem. And I would say, well, let me pray about it. And I'd say, well, you're staying 4 days and this is how many hours I need you. And it was remarkable. It was remarkable. And that changed. I was in an airport. I was beside a man who was suffering. And I said, sometimes if I put my hands on people, it helps them to feel better. Would you like me to do that? And he said, yes. And I did. And he was really in pain about his wife being ill. And he said, I feel better. Would you come to Switzerland? I'll pay for you. Come to Switzerland. Come heal my wife. So I'd never done that before. So I said yes. And I go to Switzerland, and she had bone cancer. And I found myself in this room wrapped in wet sheets. So much energy was going, with my foot in a bucket of water. And she got well. And I said, that's not what I should be doing. I should be teaching people to heal themselves. I shouldn't have a line outside my door. I should be teaching people to heal themselves. And that changed everything. And then I started teaching.
Oh boy, that's amazing. That's just amazing. When you talk about moving through your fear, can you get a little more specific about how you've done that in your life?
Yeah, fear comes in a lot of different forms, and there are lots of levels in terms of whether you're reacting in your mental, emotional, spiritual, etheric, physic, karmic, where your trigger is arising from, really influences how you can make sense of it. And sometimes you can't make sense of it. Sometimes you have to recognize that the fear itself is just that. It doesn't have to have a reason. It's just that. And so in my 5 Worlds program, one of the things I teach in the sword, which is the physical body, how you deal with fear, is how you create this fear as a reality and allow that reality to be present with you in such a way that you can literally walk through it. And we literally take physical steps to walk through it. So you're understanding that on the other side, you're still there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The psyche wants you to believe that you're going to die.
Right.
And when you take these little steps, when you do the little exercises, when you breathe, when you find a teacher, when you learn how to acknowledge the extraordinariness of who you are, what starts to happen is, as you gradually keep moving through it, and you have to trust something to do it. Mm-hmm. Trust is a big part of what strength is all about. Mm-hmm. But when you get to the other side, it's like, I'm still here. Wow.
And sometimes, what was I so afraid of?
I never felt that.
I have.
I have definitely acknowledged what I was so afraid of.
Well, what I mean is, it wasn't the big boogeyman that I thought it was. It was a really tiny little thing, but it felt big. And once gone through, you turn back and go, gee, it was really not as overwhelming as I thought.
I think that's true when we're dealing with our identity a lot, because our identity is imprinted from a bigger world from when we were small, and particularly if we weren't recognized when we were small, or we were abused, or some force was put upon us in a way that was not kind and loving, then the world feels enormous. And the dark in the world can feel enormous because that's the memory that you have from when you were small. But it might not have been a terrible thing. It might just have been a crash of a tree. It might have been somebody yelling at you for something that maybe you didn't even do.
I'm talking about, a physical thing, like, being afraid to go on a ropes course, or, there are so many ways to be afraid.
Yeah.
And if we just, it's metaphorical, as, the physical fear is metaphorical for other kinds of fear, but it's in facing it and daring to take little steps or bigger steps or dive that we do find our way on the other side. And sometimes we say, well, gee, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
I think that's true. And I think I almost drowned twice, even now, knowing this is not the same day as those days were in the ocean. when I get to the ocean, if I feel the slightest undertow, I'm like, no, I don't think this is my day in the ocean.
Yeah.
You know, that memory is still
Mhm.
in my body. So I think there are, I think you might know this story. When I was in acting school, there was a scene that I was in where I had an anxiety attack. It was triggering something in me. And this was when I was really young. And I couldn't breathe. I'm standing there and I couldn't breathe. And the teacher comes over and he says, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." He took me and he had me lie down on the floor and he whispered in my ear, brilliant guy. And he just said, "What would happen if you took a breath?" And I said, "I would fall into a well and never come out."
Mm.
And he paused. And then he whispered into my ear, "Lisa, if you take a breath, you will fall, but it's only a curb." I have used that many, many, many times,
Mm.
realizing that my fear of that well was only a curb, that I was going to survive. There was no bottomless pit.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you know, your telling of the story so far, especially in the beginning, at the early part, there is this voice that comes out of you. There's this other you that surprises you. That um, talk a little bit about and what you've done with her, how she's become you, or you've become her, or but how that must have been very shocking at first.
Yeah, I I I don't know why, but I trusted it.
Mhm.
Even from the very first moment of, I'm going to go to Nepal. Yes, I'll meet you for a cup of coffee. Whatever it was, it felt like, we call it guidance on so many different levels. What is that? Is it in you? Is it the inner strength, inner voice, inner relationship of my spirit body that I'm giving voice to, that I'm allowing myself to hear?
Mhm.
Is it a larger resource that is moving through me that I am allowing myself to be a vehicle for? I
Mhm.
think it's both. I don't think we ever fully give up our own filter because every individual is so individual. But I know that for me, the trust that there was a solidness in the voice that was clear. I mean, I might not have liked hearing it.
Mhm.
I'm going to Nepal. What? But it was clear. There wasn't a vagueness to it. There was a real clearness in it. And it has been my whole life now since. I really believe there was a woman who wanted to write a book about me in LA, and the title of the book was "The Woman Who Said Yes," because every time that voice would speak, I'd say yes.
This is the piece that I think would be very interesting for our gathered friends here, because you know most of these people have been on a spiritual path for a long time, and um, I think it's very helpful to hear somebody else in case they're hearing these kinds of things and not trusting them fully. It's very helpful to hear your story where you do follow, you did and you have. In fact, relying on that voice has, I'm going to dare to say, helped you through some of your dark nights of the soul.
Mm,
Right? Really was the tether in sometimes.
absolutely. I think the other part of it, though, is I always felt there was beauty in the voice.
Hmm.
So it wasn't an authoritarian voice.
Right.
there was a grace inside the voice at the same time of this strength. And I did have this remarkable ceremony that was given to me where the presence came into me and really cleaned me and gave me the law that no one is greater than or lesser than anyone else. And when I had that happen for me, there was a completely different level of trust that I was willing to go to.
That's interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
And I still questioned it. Even after that, I still questioned it. So this is a sweet story. So I'm a poet, I'm doing all these poetry readings and I have poet friends, and a friend of mine is not feeling well. And I said, Cubby, I've been doing a lot of healing work. Maybe I could take a look and just see what's going on with you. And he said, oh, sure, come over to the house tomorrow. I come over. I had him lie down on the floor. I look at him. He's got parasites. I said, Cubby, you have parasites. You have to go to the doctor. And he goes, oh, okay. And a week goes by. And I'm in my house, which is this like a section of a house that's near the water in Malibu that I'm renting. And nobody stops by to see me ever in that because it's behind a gate and it's part of a thing. Anyway, I am pacing. Hope, I am literally pacing back and forth across my small living room. And I'm going, God, I need a sign. If you really, really, really want me to take on this work, I need a sign, and it's got to be clear. I don't want to miss this. You got to tell, it's got to be a clear sign. I don't know, maybe it was 5-10 minutes later, there's a knock at my door. A friend has stopped by. He never stops by. He said, I'm driving by. I just thought maybe we should have a cup of tea. I said, sure, come on in for a cup of tea. I'm making the cup of tea. And he says, by the way, did you hear about Cubby? I said, no, what happened to Cubby? He said, Cubby has parasites. And I went in front of my friend. I just went, okay, I give up. I give up. I can't imagine a clearer sign,
Yep. And it's that fast. It can be that fast.
So, for everyone here, trust is personal. It's so personal. What are you trusting inside of yourself? To me, it has to start with your heart. That's what happened to me. It started with trusting my heart, and that my heart was a part of that voice, that voice touches my heart in some way. That's why it never felt authoritarian. It always felt like, and I would listen to the conversations that I was having. This happened quite a lot, Hope, where I'd be sitting with somebody and we'd be having this conversation. I'd say, maybe it's time for me to get a teacher. And I'm really listening to what I'm saying. And then I'm sitting, well, maybe it is time for me to get a teacher. And then, of course, a teacher appeared, but listening to the conversations I'm having I was having at that time was just as valuable as the voice coming in, because it was the voice,
Yeah. Yeah. And then as you went forward, and even recently, some of the challenges that you've had, do you find they've gotten easier or do you feel like how do you, in terms of your emotional strength, especially your also your physical strength, but your psycho-emotional strength, has it gotten easier at this point in your life?
I'm more accustomed to it. So I value it. I'm grateful for it. I feel the strength, and I am aware that I need to care for that.
Oh, that's interesting. Talk about that.
Balance is my I guess, my wake-up call.
Uh-huh.
If I am imbalanced in the sense that I'm paying attention to how I physically feel, I am kind, I am aware if I'm not kind, I immediately find a way to be kind again. There's this, when I led 3 trips to Egypt, I've been there 4 times, and Ma'at weighs the value of a life on a scale against a feather.
Right.
And the question is, you get free passage into a gorgeous afterlife if your life has been as pure as that feather.
Mm-hmm.
And there is such truth waiting, in that image.
Yes, I agree.
And so for me, having been through that so many times and being disappointed, so many times, having disappointed myself, believing that I took on a lot of responsibility being a teacher and leading trips like you are.
Yeah.
And then it wouldn't end up the way I had hoped it would end up, because wasn't that the voice said, if I do it this way, who am I disappointing then?
Mm-hmm.
And then the lesson was forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
To forgive, to forgive, to forgive, to forgive. And what are we forgiving? You're forgiving judgment. You're really forgiving the pain that you caused from the judgment. And you're forgiving yourself for being in judgment because you couldn't help it. And that's where it went. And then you forgive it and you come back to that balanced place. But, it's this incredible, we have these dancing images, it's incredible to receive the opportunity for a challenge and to breathe with that challenge and then to be kind.
Yeah.
It's like you become incredibly strong the kinder you get.
The kinder you get, the stronger you get.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. That's true. I like this idea of attending to your strength, like taking care of your strength, and understanding that all of the, forgiveness and kindness and non-judgment, like all of these incredible qualities are practices that actually all feed into strength building.
And creativity. Because if I'm just in the static state of kindness and gratitude, and I'm not actually creating something, I believe everybody is a gift. Each person is a gift. You were born to be a gift. You have a gift inside of you. And if you create from that gift, whatever it is, you could be reading children's stories in the hospital to a child. You could be, helping your neighbor, with lunch. There's all kinds of creative energy. You don't have to be like writing a play, but the dynamic of that, using that creativity, is enormously strengthening.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's self-verifying. This is who I am. I'm sure you have clients who say, well, who am I? And you go,
oh yes, quite a few.
Right. And you go, well, I don't know what you say, but what I say is, well, you are who you are, and it's wonderful. You get to discover it over and over and over your whole lifetime.
Beautiful, beautiful. This is so, it's so interesting to talk on this topic. It's something we don't really have a chance. We just don't do it. We don't sit down and say, so let's talk about strength, inner strength and what that's all about. And when you kind of, really scratch the surface, it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating how we all go about it. I'm kind of curious about the other people here on the call, and if anybody wants to share at all, or ask Lisa a question, because I'm curious about what you all do and how you all see your strength, and if you see yourself as strong. I see you as strong, but do you see yourselves as strong? You know, would anybody care to jump in here? Terry?
Lisa, thanks so much for sharing so much. Really so interesting. So thanks so much. I think for people that are old souls, we have a sense of I think we have an innate sense of wisdom. And I think that innate sense of wisdom gives us strength. So for me, I think my strength comes from the inner wisdom, maybe of so many lifetimes. So that's just my thought of old souls have more strength because we have innate wisdom. If that's just my immediate thought.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks for sharing, Terry.
Thank you.
And I would guess that wisdom is actually pretty close to what Lisa was talking about in terms of the voice, right? Could you say that? Because how do you know that you're wise? How do you, right? How do you surmise that? It must have been tried. You must have tried it out and it must have worked out for you. There must be some communication going there. What do you think?
I'd be curious what other people have to say about that, and maybe, I'd be curious what other people have to say. But it's always been an inner knowingness, from the time I'm a little kid. So I don't hear things. It's more I feel them or know them. But I love hearing information from people who do. I certainly listen to a lot of it. So, but I'd be curious to hear what other people think about that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on the topic? Lorna, did you want to say something?
I would love to, yeah. I feel like I'm strong because I'm still here. That great song, I'm still here. But most of my life, I haven't felt very well physically. And, been to a million doctors, nobody can figure out what it is. So it feels very frustrating, like something is getting in the way of me expressing my gifts. Yeah. And I've done a ton of exploring and I haven't quite cracked the code, so to speak. So I'm very curious what you and Lisa might reflect upon there. It almost, sometimes I have felt like I have an entity or I need an exorcism or something like that. There's just something in the way. And I mean, I can tell you about, the heritage of the ancestors in the concentration camps, and I have the Cossacks on one side and the Nazis on the other, and I mean I've gone through all this, but I'm still stuck.
What do you think, Lisa?
Well, Lorna, would it be all right with you if I psychically scanned you for a moment?
Absolutely.
All right. Just a sec. I'm going to put you there.
Do you need her to stand up or something? Or?
Nope. Nope. Lorna, just say your name again.
Lorna.
Okay, hold on a second. So has this been digestive issues, stomach issues?
You got it.
Okay, hold on. So it's almost like you're twisted. Hold on. So you do have some history stuck in you. There is no question about that. It's tied up with grief. And I'm looking for what would be of best help.
I think I'll make an appointment with you. So you don't feel
That's
pressure
probably a good idea.
the next 2 minutes because you already got so much. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do that, and let's see how I can see what I can help with. Okay.
Great. So
I
I just
got-
do that
I-
to your website.
Yeah.
Okay, will do.
If you click on the her name in the email, it takes you to her website.
Great. And I think I'm on her. Anyway, I'll find her. Thanks so much.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for asking.
I got a sharp art object in there. So you'll see, you'll figure it out. But wow, Lorna, thanks for sharing that. Anybody else, how on any of the topics that we've discussed on strength, on how you rely. Fiona, did you want to say something? Yeah, go ahead.
I feel strong. I've never really kind of really examined the whys and wherefores. I think a lot of it is life experience. I'm old enough now that I've been through a lot. And I've taken a lot of risks and, done a lot of things that I've come through. I've been fascinated, Lisa, to hear, the passageways of going past the fear, because I think I've done that enough times, and that no doubt gives you, that extra muscle and strength. I just love what you've said. A shorthand for me in terms of what forgiveness is forgiving your judgment. I mean, it's like forgiving my judgment. It's that's beautiful. That's really given me a lovely shortcut. There was something else that you said I wanted to comment on, which was really lovely. It'll come back to me. But no, thank you just so much. It's been really lovely to listen. Oh, my voice, it's like I think it's always been with me. And I've never really been conscious of it being separate from me in a way, I think only when I get stubborn or I'm not listening, sometimes it shouts at me or it will actually even laugh at me, and then when I've been ignoring it or just not thinking it's there or not remembering or whatever, and I hear something like a clear, I remember one particular one was, I think when, I was scurrying around trying to be everything to everybody, in my community, being on this group and that community. And I think I was beginning to run myself, a bit ragged. And this voice said, it's enough to take care of yourself, And I said, really? It was kind of, there are these things that just don't dawn on you. You're trying to be good or you're trying to do the right thing. And that kind of course correction has always been just so valuable to me. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. When we're actually, in my experience, when I'm listening, it's clear. And when I'm not listening, it's clear.
Yes.
The difference is really palpable. What you gained by taking risks and by moving into and through your fear in a way that you have, you've also taught your nervous system how to handle it.
Yeah.
In the beginning, our nervous system, depending upon what our history is, can go into high overreactivity, and we just cannot handle any more pressure, any more fear, any more overwhelm. And so we retreat. But as you become more present with yourself, the nervous system starts to relax. And I love what you have done in the sense of and also your voice. Your voice has the joy in it of the life that you're living.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
One of the other ways, it's like when I tend to sort of stay in the background a bit, but although I think I know things and I know what to say or do, but I just hold my reins back. But when I have to speak up, it doesn't let go. It's kind of like I get hot and I get, I feel like I am being pushed and I just have to stand up and speak up,
Yeah.
So that's another way I feel it comes through me or speaks to me. The thing that I forgot to say was that you mentioned was that kindness, every kindness, adds to your strength. And I love that. So I have 2 gems from you about the judgment and forgiveness and the kindness.
Wonderful.
Thank
I'm
you.
so happy. Yeah, great.
These are really important for us as we are in such a bifurcated, or at least the attempt to make us in a bifurcated community, countries. The pressure is to separate, the pressure is to, I don't know, be not not as kind, not as thoughtful, not as forgiving, not as not judgmental. That's the pressure. So, I mean, this is one of the reasons why it's so important to come together, to have these conversations, because sometimes our nervous systems get wonky with all of this pressure. And remembering that we have other people who come together and say, okay, we're backing, we've got your back. Each one of us has each other's back in as much as we can online. And also remembering that we always have nature that has our backs, and we can discharge and work with nature to garner strength, to garner more strength.
Mhm.
I mean, Lisa has been all over the world, not just Egypt and not just Nepal, but some wild places, and works with the earth all the time.
Mhm.
And so I think, this is a big piece of the pie, having the earth as our partner in these times to continue to maintain our strength.
Also, to know that we are a partner to the earth. So it
Yeah.
goes both ways.
Well, yeah, a partner is both ways.
Right.
And
Sometimes we think of a partner as someone or something that's holding us up, but we are actually a part of that holding up. So if I think ceremony and ritual are enormous strength builders.
yeah,
Having any kind of practice, a 2-minute practice, a 1-minute practice, whatever it is where you're expressing gratitude. And if you do it with nature, of course, it's really stunning. But being able to embody nature and feel nature as the grace it is, and then you feel the grace of you in the grace of nature.
Yeah.
There is an unmistakable opening of the heart.
mm-hmm. Yep.
You can't keep your heart closed when you enter that grace.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone can have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's why protecting the planet is so important. Making sure that it's not just hug the tree, love the tree,
Mm-hmm.
When I was in Mongolia, I asked to go to these particular deer stones, which are these beautiful, tall stones that have these drawings on them from prehistoric time, that have these deer on them.
Mm.
And we got to one of them, and Mongolians, by the way, are the most wonderful people. Just incredible people. So we're at the deer stone, and I have my crystal bowl, and I have my rattle, and I have little things in my pouch. And I said, I want to do a ceremony at the stone because I want to wake the stone back up again.
Mm.
And they went, how do you do that? It wasn't how weird are you? And okay, well, you've seen the stone. It was, how do you do that? And so I taught them how to wake the stone back up. And they were so happy. And the stone was happier. There are these opportunities.
Yeah. And one time I was doing a workshop at my house in Great Barrington, and the weather was nice. So at one point, it was an Infinity Wave workshop, and so I said, go find, see where you're drawn, which tree. There were so many beautiful trees on that property. I said, which tree are you drawn to? And then take a picture of the tree before you engage with it, and then just do the wave with the tree. The tree will be getting all this yummy love and compassion and all that stuff, and then take a picture afterwards. And the before and after pictures were different.
Yeah.
You'd see light, you'd see all kinds of stuff happening in the tree afterwards. It's everybody can do this, like with stone, with a tree, with a whatever. If your mind needs proof, go ahead and do something like that, to see. And last Monday we had the most interesting group come through for meditation. We had Tibetan monks come through for the first half, and then we had the elementals come through. A whole group of elementals came through for the second half, and both of them were talking about fun and joy. And the monks said when they crossed over that Buddha was laughing at them because they had, they'd been, in the cold, in the hot, in the this and the that, not eating and doing. He's like, you're supposed to enjoy your life. This is crazy what you've been doing, you silly monks.
Yeah. I like to say, if you bring joy into the world, there's more joy in the world. This is not a bad thing. This is a really good thing. Right. The more you let your heart be vulnerable to the reality that you are a powerful being and you can bring joy into the world. That's strength.
That sure is. And to choose that over what your neighbors are doing, is really bold. It's really bold.
Also, to be truthful.
Yeah.
To be truthful, in that kindness, allowing your own vulnerability, your own truthfulness. There are a lot of people who can take advantage of that. Absolutely. So it's not to be weak and be truthful. It's to be clear and truthful. Mm. That law that was given to me, no one is greater than or lesser than anyone else. Well, that's if you believe it. You have to believe that.
Right.
Yeah. And so you are meeting with, so I meet somebody who is giving me a hard time, and I meet that same energy with my powerful heart energy at the same time. We're meeting each other. Then what happens? It's very interesting what can happen. It doesn't always happen, but it happens a lot.
Well, and that's the beauty of the great links that we can create, right? We can create these interactions between two, and that links, then we turn and we just create these gigantic links, very strong links.
Yep. We're in, as you were saying, this is a very tumultuous time. I believe it's going to get more tumultuous.
Yep.
And so really having these conversations and letting people feel community and knowing that there are like-minded and that we are not becoming afraid of the world having a tumultuous time. And instead, we are bringing that light in, not to change it.
No.
But just to meet it.
Yeah. Definitely.
I can't stop the war in the Ukraine. It's heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. But there are wars all over the world right now, not just there. And they're heartbreaking. And there are people who are being abused, and there are people who are killing other people. And the level to which the human being that has been given the capacity to choose of all of nature, the human being can change instantly. Mm-hmm. It's an honor to be a human being in the midst of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, and recognize that we actually, I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize they do have a choice, and but we do know that we have choices and how
Mhm.
we're going to stand in that tumult and that chaos, how we're going to stand in the yes and of all these things that are happening on the one hand, and I'm choosing to be this. When we stand like a tower, right, of joy and gratitude, and I'm not talking about airy fairy, I'm talking about the nuts and bolts, the bricks, the mortar of joy, the bricks and mortar of uh gratitude. It's not light, it's strong as heck. And then that reverberates, right? That, like that stone that you woke up, it it has a vibration.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why when I got into sound healing, it was so extraordinary to really recognize, because I teach a couple of things. The first is to be able to release the sound, which many people are afraid of, to be able to let the voice from the body release the sound. So then you are listening to the body to release the sound. But then you're also, I teach about boundary, because I think the identity of the human being, each identity is precious. And so if there's blending, a lot of blending going on, people don't feel that preciousness of their own identity.
Right.
But how do you do that with sound? And so that's been, my course. That's what I love to teach through the Globe Sound Healing Center, the Institute. So
Yeah, if anybody is intrigued by sound healing, Lisa is a fantastic teacher, and you've got a course coming up, or?
I do. I think the course starts May 31st. It's 4 classes through the Globe Institute. I think it's the 31st, and then the 2nd, and then the following week. It's a Tuesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
I teach sound some little bit in the 5 worlds, which is really more about personal development and transformation, and recognizing your relationship to spirit and yourself and your body and the fear and the mystery and the wholeness that lives inside of you. So, I mean, that's, and psychic development. But the sound healing is much more specifically through the Sound Institute. And, anybody can write to me, or get me through the website, or write to Anita, and we can lead you to what that is and where it's happening and
Great.
that kind of thing.
Great. Well, I highly recommend it if you're inclined in that direction. There are, a number of people out there who teach sound healing and so on, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone with the kind of background and the depth of understanding that Lisa has, the experience that she has. So anyway, let's just see if we have any other comments or contributions that anybody would like to make. This has really been a great conversation.
Oh, you're a wonderful interviewer.
Well, we're just having a chat, just girl
Yes.
to girl here. Who would like to speak? Anybody? Because we love hearing from you, and your points of view are valuable, as you know. Anybody?
Can I just say one more thing? If
Yes,
nobody else,
please.
I don't want to take up space if somebody else is talking. But one thing that I find is that I do have a great capacity for joy, and I have fun and so on. But I find that maybe it's because of that, and that's a strength, that I'm able to cry a lot. And I find that crying is not necessarily for me, I mean, I don't really have anything of myself to cry about, but I'm very out there in terms of where the world is. I'm a bit of a hermit, but I feel I'm in contact with what's happening in the world, do you know?
Mhm.
And I just let it come through me and don't try and explain it, So maybe that's another strength, that if you do have a lot of joy and good fortune and everything, you can be, a channel for some of the grief of the world as well.
It's wonderful that you don't attach a story to it.
Yeah.
That you just let it be, and you let it let that reality be expressed. It's really wonderful. I mean, that really is a gift.
Yeah. It's kind
Thank
of heavy
you.
sobbing at the moment, but it's, it really feels like it clears things a lot.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'd all get too bollocked up without some emotional outlet, that's it's true. It's real. It's hard to take. And allowing that is I agree with Lisa, especially not labeling it and having, all that stuff. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fiona.
Yeah. The story can hold us back. We think we keep processing the story. And we keep thinking that you have to get under the onion to understand what's actually causing these things to happen. And that is true. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes we really do need to find, because there's a piece there that is waiting to be revealed.
Mhm.
But there are other times where sometimes what's at the bottom of the lake in your life can stay at the bottom of the lake, and you can really enjoy how the sun is reflecting off the top of the water. You are the whole lake. So you're not going to, I like to say, if we're big enough to hold the dark and the angry and the frustrated and the hurt and the bruised, and it's easy if you allow the trueness of who you are as a whole being, because they become small things that you can put in your pocket.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm saying? I think you do. You go through a challenge and you meet it, and then it becomes a history, and you can just put it in your pocket. If you ever need to refer to it, you can. But isn't it more interesting to let the light and the heart move you forward into wherever you're going? Yeah. It sounds like that's what you've done.
That's beautiful. You talk like a poet as well. It's lovely.
Oh, well, thank you. I had a lot of years of thinking that way. So thank you.
She is a poet. She is a poet.
On my
Okay.
website, in my websites, I have a poem up that I wrote not too long ago. It's called In Your Body. And it just keeps reminding me, or on my newsletter, I'll put a new poem in every couple of months or something. But there's something about poetry, real, Fiona, there's the metaphor that is so filled with grace to be able to understand your life in an image, in a metaphor. There's such beauty in that. You don't get stuck.
Yes. Beautiful.
Do you write poetry?
No, I do write a bit, and I should write more. And I feel that voice comes through me sometimes when I do, but I have a feeling that I don't let it,
Oh, well, that's good news. That's good news, All right.
Okay,
Now
I'll be asking you every week, have you written a poem, Fiona?
you might want to give her a subject. I found that in the beginning. I was a part of a poetry troupe when I was in LA, and every week they would give us a new subject, and then we perform them. We were performance poets, and it was great fun. Having the subject really helps.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
All right. I'm going to think of one for you. And we might as well all do it. It'd be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fiona. Karen, I saw you took your mute off. Did you want to say something?
Well, just a couple of things. One was I feel that one of the gifts I've had in life and strengths is to just listen. Just listen to that still small voice. And I get, like my little steps along the way in the strangest ways. But for Hope specifically, I had recently, a couple months back, done a tarot card reading with someone, which is a story unto itself. But then she says to me, she knew about Priscilla, and she says, "Go talk to Matar." And I'm like, okay. But so I do. I go up into Matar and, man, a few words. One word, strength. One word, strength. Which I thought was cool. But the fun part to me was like, why did she say that? And where is she? And follow it.
Mhm.
and follow it. So that was the one thing that probably only Hope would totally get the story about Matar. But the other thing, you talk about wrapping things up in like a phrase, that I appreciate this phrase that friends sing in some song with their choir. And that I think it wraps it all up to me, where it says, be yourself, everyone else is taken.
Mhm.
I feel like that's one of my gifts, or one of my strengths. It's just, yeah. But that little twist, everybody else is taken, was like, well, that says it all.
Yeah,
It
I love
does.
it. I love it. I do. I love it. You know, every rose is the same, but it's not. There are no two leaves that are the same. There are no two snowflakes the same. There are no two twins, are very, very different. Triplets, quadruplets, it doesn't matter. Clones, they have cloned animals, and the personality of the cloned animal is different than the original animal.
Yeah.
Just sometimes when I really consider the vastness of the universe and how it's unimaginable, there's no way for me to grasp how extraordinarily large this universe is. And it is filled, probably not just on this planet, but it is filled with billions and billions and billions of souls. And no two are the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm just,
And the other thing is the phrase you used about neither looking up nor down to anybody. You maybe said it in a little bit different way. Nobody is better, or
no one is better, or no one
Or-
is better or worse than anyone else.
because I remember decades ago, I think it was Deepak Chopra. It seemed at first I was like, really? Because his definition of enlightenment was neither look up nor down to anyone and being carefree. Now, decades ago, I thought, well, that sounds awful kind of simplistic and whatever. But now, decades later, I'm like, well, that sums it up. Really, that practice of neither looking up nor down at anybody, and the practice of being carefree takes a lot of, faith.
It takes faith.
Faith.
Yeah. But I'm going to remember, be yourself, everybody else is taken,
Isn't that crazy?
I just
Really
love
dig
it. I love it.
And they sing it in nursing homes, and every, person just, they get this big grin. Just be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lisa,
Yeah.
and Hope, and everyone.
Thank you, Karen. And just so everybody knows, Priscilla and Matar were bridal trees, huge 300-year-old maple trees that graced my driveway when I lived in Great Barrington. And they were absolutely magnificent, and their branches crossed, and that they were mates. And unfortunately, Priscilla died, and I had to take her down, which was one of the worst things I've ever had to do. And a big chunk of her is in Karen's yard, and she has been heating Karen's home for a couple of years now. But we've kept one piece because hopefully one day we will have a slab, which will be a table. But Matar, and I asked permission. I mean, I asked all the trees, what should we do here? What should we do? And they all said, let her go, let her go. She's tired. It's okay. And she said the same thing. But I was concerned about Matar because he would be all alone. And anyway, so that's the tree that Karen went and he and a few words, he just said strength. I love it. I love it. Anyway, my friends. Okay, I think we are going to say goodnight unless anybody had anything else to say. And Lisa, did you want to say something, Roz? Okay.
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had this question when I heard you, Lisa, speak about heat in your body. And then in just listening to you, Hope, speak, when you were speaking about these trees, then all of a sudden I just get this, my body just becomes incredibly warm. And it seems different from menopause. And and Karen's laughing. And I feel very light sensitive, like if I'm under certain qualities of light. And even the sun at times, when my voice is a little shaky, like feeling the sunlight in certain ways, I almost feel it's like I'm being penetrated, and I need to adjust to that. So given that it just happened when you were speaking about these trees, I put forth this question, if that's appropriate, or if not, I can reach out to Lisa. I can reach out to you at another time.
What's the question?
Oh, so the question is, because I heard,
Are you asking about what that heat is, what that means?
Well, I heard Lisa speak about sensitivity to heat and energy in her body. So yeah, I would love for you or her or both of you to speak to that, if that's appropriate now. Yeah, but I'm just struck, like when I feel the heat and the intensity of it, and yeah.
Lisa,
Is that clear?
Yeah. Did you want to say something?
Sure. So, I mean, it's individual for everybody, how you are sort of signaling to yourself to pay attention, right? And so heat can be a way, tingles, chills, cold, change of taste, feeling the sun differently. These are all signals that your body is trying to communicate something to pay attention to, right? Like right now, you're paying attention. That triggered something in you. For me, when the body is sending out these messages, it's saying, I might be ready to become more embodied. It might be time for me to become more connected to my body in a deeper way, in a more structural way, in a more sense of boundary way, so I know myself better, so I can feel, oh, I see you shifting. So is it all right with you if I watch you a little bit while we're talking? So so when we come into our body, there are all kinds of ways that we respond. Sometimes we end up feeling nauseous, or we have heart palpitations, or we feel electrical stimulation in our skin. These are all appropriate for the nervous system that is going through a transition and trying to understand, what does embodiment mean? Does this make sense to you?
Yes, I feel like my whole journey, like my whole time on this earth, has been one of greater embodiment. Yeah.
So if you're dropping into another level of embodiment right now, there'd be an exercise I would give you to see how this would feel. And this is a very simple exercise. Everyone can do this. It's just lovely. I'd like you to imagine the bones in your arm, and like you have X-ray vision, see the bones in your arm and fall in love with your bones. And see how that feels to just fall in love with your bones. And do it with your eyes open. So your body is sense feeling. There you are. And as you, oh, beautiful, beautiful. So now spread that out and fall in love with your skeleton. And keep breathing. And just keep breathing. Oh, good. So can you feel you have a little bit more density in your body?
I recognize that I'm actually drawn into the marrow in my bones.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And also feel
Yeah.
the structure. Fall in love with the structure.
With the form.
Yeah, with the form
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Just like that. So,
Mhm.
great,
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
Can you feel
Mhm.
that? Isn't that
Yeah.
lovely?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I'm going
lovely.
into, yeah, going into my skull.
That's great.
Hmm. Hmm.
So how does it feel to you?
It actually feels funny because I don't think of myself as a skeleton.
Okay, keep the image as you're talking to me.
Okay.
There you are.
Yeah.
So if you keep the image while you're talking, it's gonna help your nervous system to
Mm.
stabilize.
Mm.
There you are.
Mm.
Very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's fascinating.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I am more apt to go diffuse than,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
I've never seen you so solid. And I've known you a little while. This is a good
Yeah.
practice.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
Mhm. Okay. I hope I hope it's helpful to others as well.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure it
I'm
will.
sure. Yeah.
I also am just curious. I'm speaking on my phone. I'm curious who's behind you. Is that a Hathor or ice? I've been loving just the painting and the colors, the gold and the orange.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Hathor.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You know, you have Hathor Isis as the same goddess in certain times in history. And I prefer to think of her as Hathor God Isis
Hmm.
in both her forms in this particular statue. I have other Egyptian iconic, what is it called, Hope? Iconography? Iconography. I have Sekhmet, I have Thoth, however you pronounce them. I like to call them Thoth. Different Horus. Each one, for me, embodies a certain quality of the strength that lives in me, the truthfulness that lives in me through how I understand the gods and goddesses as they have been identified through history.
That's actually a
So-
really interesting point to kind of end up on, because the gods and goddesses of all these cultures forever have been called upon by humans to provide them with what, strength, courage, etc., to get through times. They pulled those gods right into them. They
Mhm.
prayed to them and then just pulled them in. And I think that's a piece that some of us have, I guess, depending on our relationships, but we don't use the gods that way so much anymore.
When I first got back from Greece and everything was going pretty wild, I wrote a poem. It's very short. These gods and goddesses know we know as we take their name in vain. So they will teach us again and again and again. And if we still don't listen, they will teach us harder.
I have a friend who sees all these beings, and when she went to Greece, she said all the gods and goddesses were in the treetops, and they were all very sad because everybody had forgotten them.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just hanging out in the trees. They're not gone. They need our interaction. They appreciate it, and it's almost like, the angels in my hair. If you ever read that book, the angels are hanging around going, I'd like to help. I'd like to
Yeah.
help. I'm sitting here, waiting for you to ask me to help.
It was so interesting. I took my daughter on a trip of the United Kingdom when she graduated college, and we went to Wales, and we came up by the Clanavy, and there was like a grove of trees. And I said, "So, sweetheart, there are angels and little sprites in that grove of trees. Would you like to go to that grove of trees and just sort of be with them?" and she who at that time was sort of looking at me like I was a weirdo, said, "Sure." And we walked over to the grove of trees, and the light changed, and the way the sun came in changed, and the air changed. And she noticed it, and she couldn't say anything, but she noticed it. And then we left the grove of trees, and we had a lovely trip in Wales.
And she never left that island practically again.
No, she's living in Scotland ever since. Yeah.
All right, my friends. Well, Lisa, thank you so much. This has been a fascinating evening and much food for thought. And I will send this out as a replay, and we can all listen again if we wish to. But please, share this with friends if you think that would be helpful for anyone else. You don't get to have Lisa for a couple hours like this that often. She's a busy gal.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Lisa. And thanks all of you for coming and for sharing. It really was wonderful.
Lovely to meet you all, and just lovely. Thank you for listening to my stories and being interested in yourself at the level that you are, and following your own callings. I just want to honor and salute you, each of you, for the courage it takes to do that.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Good
Have
night.
a beautiful week until I see you Monday, if I do see you Monday. All right. Night night.
Good night.
Hey.